I'm Jess. I make weird crafts, and today I'm gonna show you how to make these stupid gloves. Here they are. I came up with the pattern for these gloves completely by accident. I was actually trying to crochet like a cactus or a houseplant, but I made about 3 or 4 of these fronds, and the weirdo in me took over, and I put the cactus fronds on my fingers like they were bugles. I decided almost immediately that they needed to be crocheted into these Grinch looking gloves, and I spent the next couple hours doing so. I think that these pointy, absurd gloves are one of the most original things that I've crocheted this whole year, if not one of the most original things I've ever made, and it was entirely unplanned. Meanwhile, these would be really fantastic for a Halloween costume. You could be a Grinch or like a witch or even some kind of long-fingered alien. I even think it'd be kind of funny to take this concept and make it into a foot and be some sort of chicken. All you'd need is a fluffy coat and like these on your feet. Just a thought. I'd recommend that you watch this entire process before starting on these gloves for yourself. I'd call this a moderately difficult crochet project. Having freehand crochet or amigurumi experience would definitely be beneficial in attempting this project. This is my first ever attempt at sharing an original crochet pattern. This isn't an exact pattern because everybody has different hands. This is sort of a guided freehand tutorial. I have to sculpt these gloves as I go around my own hands, but I'll be as specific as I can so you can make this work for you. That being said, ideally you'd be making these gloves for yourself or for a very patient friend or loved one. I'm using a 4mm crochet hook with medium weight yarn. I think this is the Red Heart Super Saver yarn, but I'm not entirely sure. But the first few gloves that I made were all completely freehand, and the pattern that I'm going to be providing today is just a written down version of one of my freehand go-bys. Once I wrote the pattern, I followed it myself to create this glove. Today I'll be making the other orange glove. Start by making all 5 fingers so that you can connect them all at once at the end. How to make these gloves. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make one of the regular fingers, not the thumb. So leave about a couple inches off the end here, create a slip knot, and we're gonna create a base chain of 10. I wouldn't make this base chain too tight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Make sure you keep this flat, slip stitch into the first chain. Actually, make it a single crochet, why not? You're gonna wanna make sure that this fits over your finger comfortably. I start with 10 to fit my fingers. This first row is finicky to keep the base chain flat, but after this first row you go around, this is gonna get a lot easier. And then once you get past the starting row of single crochet stitches, single crochet into the back loop only. What we're gonna do is a single crochet. A single crochet is insert the hook, pull through 1 loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. Just going around, adding a single crochet into each of the starting chains. Now I have gotten back to the beginning here. I just like to continuously spiral into the back loop only, or whichever loop is on top. So just the back loop only is what I'm crocheting into, which is this little stitch right here. So rather than going through both, personally, I just like to go through the back loop only. So I just continuously push this thing flat so it's more of a rectangle to work with. Now, this is, one of the more enjoyable parts of the project. There's about 2 spiraled rows so far. To create these absurdly long gloves, the pinky finger has about 11 spiraled rows before starting the tapering process. The ring finger has about 15, 17 spiraled rows on the middle finger, and then 13 for the pointer finger. I would start by crocheting the middle finger and the pinky finger, which will be the biggest and the smallest, so that the pointer finger and the ring finger, you kind of make them a height in the middle of those 2. I create this varied length to create a more glamorous look, just mimicking the proportions of human hands. I think that making it a little bit more slightly human adds to how silly and creepy they are. But if you want, you could just make the 4 fingers the same length. After you start the tapering process, it adds about 1 3/4 inch. If you want to make gloves in sort of a more regular proportion, just do the spiraled rows until you get to around the cuticle of your nail or so. So from here to here, and then add the tapering process to create the pointy end of the nail. Let me make the remaining finger. And if you need to set this down, personally what I like to do is just kind of pull through a bunch of extra yarn. That way it's less likely for this to pull and to undo a bunch of your stitches. And then when you're ready to start again, just stick your hook through the hole again and pull it tight and just keep going. Okay, so this little tube is about the length that I want it to be for the ring finger. So we're going to begin the tapering process. We're gonna do a 2 together stitch, then 4 single crochets, then a 2 together stitch, 3 single crochets, a 2 together stitch, 3 single crochets, a 2 together stitch, a 3 single crochets, a 2 together stitch, 1 single crochet, 2 together stitch, and then 1 single crochet, and then chain 1. Pull tight and leave a few inches in a tail to cut. The first thing is a 2 together single crochet stitch. So for example, this is a single crochet. You stick the hook in the loop, pull up a loop, pull through 2. Let me show you what a 2 together stitch is. Stick your hook in the first loop, pull one up, and then just go to the next one. Go to the next one and pull up a loop. And then you're gonna pull through 3. That's your 2 together stitch. We're gonna follow it by 4 single crochets. Another 2 together stitch. So again, stick your hook into the back loop, pull through, same thing, stick your hook into the back loop of the next one, pull through, and then pull through all 3. Then we're gonna do 3 single crochets.
1, 2, 3.
And if you'll notice, it's starting to gently taper off at the end. I'm gonna do a 2 together stitch.
1, 2.
Pull through 3. Pull it a little tight after that. Again, 3 single crochets. Followed by a 2 together stitch. I'll pull through all through 3. Getting close to the end here. So this is gonna get a little bit complicated towards the end. And again, you don't have to follow this pattern precisely. You might have to adjust it.
1, 2.
All right, you know what? I think this is getting thin, so I'm just gonna jump again to a 2 together stitch. I'm gonna do 1 single crochet, and then a 2 together stitch.
1, 2, 3.
We're really getting to the end here. We're just gonna add 1 single crochet over here, maybe skip 1. There's a single crochet. Then we're gonna just chain 1 to seal it off and pull it tight. The tapering process is not precise, unfortunately. You may need to add an additional 2 together stitch, another single crochet, or even more of those until you get the desired shape. Make sure you leave a couple inches here, I'll show you why. So at the end, to make up for an imperfect tapering process, I use a tapestry needle to not only weave in the end, but to strategically bulk up the thinner spots, like Botox. So let me show you how I thread a tapestry needle. I take the yarn, fold it in half, pinch it together, and then push that pinched bit through the tapestry needle. So if you can see this spot here, it's a little thin, so I'm gonna do a little bit of weaving the end in right there to kind of bulk up that area. You don't wanna lose the pointy bit. If you pull the pointy end of this into itself, it's kind of hard to fix. So make sure you pinch that last stitch that you did before pulling the yarn through. And just pull it through really, really gently so you don't mess up that pointy bit. I am just going to kind of spiral around the finger. It's okay if you kind of go through the middle of it because nobody's finger's reaching this far. So again, this spot here is a little bit thin, so I'm gonna add this little bit of yarn to the end. Just kind of bulking up the spots where I think it needs a little Botox. If you lose your end, just keep your needle in place and rethread it like that. These pointy fingers, they're funnier in photos when it's far away, but it's a little bit wonky in person. But the thing about this is you can kind of bend it, pull it, and shape it the way you want. Here's how I like to pull in a final end. Just stick this in here, stick it out there, and pull the loop down into it. There's your completed finger. If you timed things correctly, go take the other 4 fingers out of the oven. These ends at the bottom here, just tie them together. to keep the fingers in the order that you want them in. Now let me show you the thumb. Here's a completed thumb, and it's a little bit of a different process. I created a base chain of 20. I went around and added 1 single crochet into each of the 20 chains. Rather than doing a tube and then a tapering thing at the end, this entire thing tapers. I did 1 2-together stitch on each round until I get to the end. And at the end, I might have added some extra 2-togethers and chain 1, and I chained 1 at the end to pull it tight. That's how this works. So make a base chain of 20. I just tried to do it on top of the tail just to give me an idea. You can also put a stitch marker in if you want to keep track, but just do 1 2-together stitch on each round, and little by little, this thing will decrease. Thumb's gonna fit on like this. And you want it this shape so it comes down like this. Look at these fun bugles. So I'll show you in more detail, but just briefly, what we're gonna be doing here is adding single crochet stitches all the way around the hand, spiraling about 8 times or so until you reach where you want to attach the thumb. And what we're going to be doing is, so you're going to go around, attach the thumb, maybe do a couple single crochets here, continue around, and what we're going to do is single crochet across, attach to the thumb, turn your work and go backwards, single crocheting around the other way. And then again, you get to the back, you're gonna attach, maybe chain 1, turn around and come back around until you get to the bottom of the thumb here, at which point it'll become easier. It's not gonna be a back and forth. You're just gonna simply be spiraling the bottom of the hand to the wrist to your desired width. You can increase or decrease the stitches as you go if needed to match the contours of the hand. You notice around here in the hand where the stitches may look a little bit more uneven. That's because you're going back and forth and not doing the same stitch like in these areas here. I'll show you how to do the rest. Let's begin attaching the fingers together. Line the fingers up in order, pointing them towards you. To connect the fingers, we're going to be working clockwise, right to left, crocheting through both the front and back loop. Press the fingers flat. On the right side of the pinky finger, on the right side of the pinky finger, slip stitch a new piece of yarn onto the pinky finger and chain 1 to function as a single crochet stitch. Continue crocheting from right to left. There isn't a specific, precise way to do this, but while single crocheting, try to crochet into at least 2 pieces of yarn to prevent gaps. I added 4 single crochet stitches across the pinky, and this might be more or less for you if you're making these gloves for different sized hands. Get close to the edge of the pinky finger with your last single crochet where the ends are tied, and then just single crochet into the next finger. Make sure that these 2 stitches in particular have extra tight tension. And then continue this process. 4 or 5 single crochets onto the next finger, evenly spaced. Another tight stitch to connect to the next finger. 5 or 7 or so single crochets onto the next finger. Continue all the way around the pointer finger, approximately 12 single crochets or so. Continue this same process on the other side of the hand with 4 or 5 single crochets on each finger with tight stitches connecting the 2 fingers. When you get to where you started, single crochet into that initial chain 1 and begin to work in the round, crocheting clockwise into both loops of each stitch. At this point, you're going to want to try on the fingers. Push the partially connected glove down onto your hand all the way. Now note if there's any extra rippling in between the fingers, like little bulky spots. If you see this on your 3rd round, decrease your stitches right between the fingers by adding a 2 together stitch to pull it tight. Personally, I put the incomplete glove on my hand a lot continuously to see if I need to do more decreases or even a couple increases by putting 2 single crochet stitches in 1 loop. You know, whatever you need to do to make this fit like a glove. On your 2nd time spiraling the 4 fingers, I would not include any decreases yet. You want your 2 together decreased stitches to have plenty of room between them to avoid unsightly rippling. After this 2nd go around, try the gloves on and take note of where you need to decrease your stitches in your next go around as needed. Now, I wouldn't worry about it too much before now, and I didn't really do a good job showing it, but around now you can start to crochet over some of your ends, the ends left over from when you tied the fingers together earlier. I would do 2 or 3 single crochets at a time covering your ends, and then just simply push the ends up into the fingers. Don't be too much more thorough than this, or the gloves could become a bit too rigid and lose some of their stretchiness. Spiral the hand clockwise with single crochet stitches approximately 8 times or until you need to attach the thumb. The stacked row of 2 together stitches on the thumb should point down towards your wrist. The first go around to attach the thumb, you're just going to do 3 single crochets or even just 3 slip stitches that connect the top of the thumb to the main body of the glove. Make a note of exactly where you want your first stitch to go, the first out of 3. I didn't have a stitch marker handy, so I just stuck a tapestry needle through before setting down the thumb. I've read that if you don't have a stitch marker, a bobby pin or a paper clip can definitely suffice. You can make 3 slip stitches or 3 single crochets to attach the thumb. It's kind of up to you. Just be sure to be crocheting through at least 2 pieces of yarn on the thumb to prevent stretched out gaps. Then continue around the rest of the hand with single crochet stitches. Around now is where things get a bit more complicated. Try the glove on for each round to get a feel for where the thumb belongs. So once you're there, slip stitch into the thumb, chain 1, and then flip your work around. We're crocheting into both loops of the previous row of single crochets. Working into the back will cause a slight irregularity in the stitch pattern, but I do it this way so I don't have to start and stop my work and end up with a bunch of ends to weave in at the end. Keep going around, single crocheting into the back of the previous row of stitches. Now single crochet into the back of the thumb, like where the back of your hand is, chain 1, turn your work, and single crochet backwards into your last row once again. So you're going to do this over and over, going back and forth, doing this somewhat frustrating process until you get to the bottom of the thumb. Now, at the same time, throughout this process, as you approach your wrist, you're going to want to decrease stitches intermittently to keep the glove tapered to your hand. If you've approached the thumb and things are way too loose, you can do a 2 together single crochet or even a 3 together stitch to pull loose areas together. So just to reiterate, I am single crocheting into the thumb, single crocheting, chaining 1, and then flipping it over and going back the way I came. After you finish the thumb area, there's no longer a need to go back and forth, so just continuously spiral the wrist, continuing to decrease your stitches as needed to get a desired wrist width. As lovely as it may look, don't make the wrist so tight that it makes it difficult to take them on and off. My last row is approximately 22 single crochet stitches. My last 3 or 4 stitches are slip stitches instead of single crochets so that the edge looks a little bit straighter. When weaving in this final end, I'd weave it upwards towards the fingers so you're not straining the stretchiness of the wrist. The only step left is to try on and admire your weird alien-like gloves that you just made. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. If you make these gloves, please tag me on Instagram at Jessica Crafternoon, and I would be very excited to share them on my story. If you want to see all the other stuff that I've crocheted this year so far, definitely go check out this video next. Please like and subscribe. Thanks so much. Bye!